Welcome to Call to Healing. We are two mental health practitioners on different parts of our professional journeys come together to have conversations our training left out. From cultural identity to white supremacy in our field, we're showing up despite it to spite it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Called to Healing. I am Dr. Kasera Dayet, licensed clinical psychologist and also psychologist committed to building practices that are rooted in liberation so that we can take down this madness that we consider the mental health field. And I have with me.
Hi, I'm Blanca Torres. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Nevada, and I'm committed like Sarah is too, but I'm a therapist currently in the middle of plotting my escape from fascism. So we are coming as we are today.
Yes. And as we usually do every single time. And as always, I want to acknowledge that we are settlers, occupiers on stolen land here in Turtle Island in our respective states. And we are constantly thinking about what liberation looks like in this hellscape that we are in. Whether for
Indeed.
ourselves personally or the people that we work with. And ironically, or maybe not so ironically, we're talking about money today. And we usually set the context for our episodes since we are typically releasing them slightly later than they're recorded. And right now, kind of aligning with this timing, we are in the middle of an ongoing government shutdown. Where maybe, according to current news reports, there is some end in sight. Obviously, it's been heavily politicized. And when you go to that orange head man's website, it says Democrats have shut down the government, which is just not an accurate way to put people fighting to make sure that we actually have our rights. And obviously, food benefits have been played with SNAP, and it's just disgusting. There's just no other way to put it. That we are willing to allow people to starve for this fascist nonsense. I can't think of words because it's just so insane. It's so insane. Pardon
It
the
is.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's the only appropriate use of that word, right? Because I would never use that to describe someone going through a mental health crisis ever. So, like, what else
Yes.
can you call what's happening? It's certainly quite a time to be alive. And I don't know. It reminds me, there's this book called The Surviving Autocracy by Masha Gessen. And in that book, they discuss one of the ways autocracy, I guess, bubbles or maintains itself, whatever, is that they state lies so boldly that they just like become the truth people believe. And so it's objectively untrue that the Democrats are causing the shutdown, and yet they state it so loudly and so boldly that it's just somehow become the reality. It's just basically the distorted use of language. Um, but great book. If someone wants to check it out. Surviving Autocracy, Marsha Gessen. It's a non-binary author from Russia, I believe.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off twice. I
You're
apologize.
you're
Uh,
good.
but yeah, and just to be clear, like Blanca and I are not just like this party, that party. That's not like the way we think about the political system. We're just stating a series of facts about what is happening right now. Um, and it's important to be clear that like we interrogate everything that goes on, both parties, backroom dealings, all of these different things that have always been true in the functioning of how the government has worked in this country. So I want to state
Yeah.
that clearly as a part of this conversation.
Yeah,
Uh,
don't walk away thinking we're Democrats or anything like that.
If
That's
you
offensive.
you know. We're just outlining that we are critical thinkers about what happens in the world around us. So, with that said, it's kind of apropos that we're talking about money, because it's very much affected by what's happening right now in the system, but what has always been going on in the system. And we specifically wanted to focus on not only just the things that people don't understand about how money works with the business of therapy, but also um, how taboo it is in some to some degree to talk about what we're going to talk about today, because people often focus on, and we've said this in other episodes, what their own frustrations with what therapists are doing versus zooming out to sort of see the system that created the issue. Um, and that it is not an issue for people to charge what they need to in order to make a living and not just survive but thrive, right? But isn't it completely messed up that we also live in a world where that means that people can't access the care that they need, right? Like both of those things are true at the same time. But because people feel like they can't control what's going on with the system, therapists often end up being the ones who are blamed for trying to live. There's
Right.
no
And
other way.
everyone's hurting, but we have one common enemy, and that is capitalism. Well, I
Yes,
have more
absolutely.
specifics about that, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Blanc, I thought maybe it would be good for us to start this conversation with like what you were thinking of when you were building your practice, and maybe even before that, kind of your relationship to the business of money when it came to being a therapist, both maybe working for other people, but then also crafting your practice. And I can also talk about that from my perspective as well.
When I first started my private practice, so immediately out of grad school, so it would have been January 2022, officially February. It was cash only, no insurance, and I knew I wanted to have a sliding scale, so I obviously turned to Casera. She supported me in creating a sliding scale based on economic justice, which I believe the method you use. Can you remind me the name and the proper citation for
Yeah.
that? I apologize.
Cunning Folk, and I believe it was 2013 or 15. I can also re double check that and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's basically where there's three buckets where people choose their fee based on their economic reality. And that really worked really well for me for a long time. I do remember specifically a moment telling my own therapist, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to charge 60 because that's what you were charging when you were an intern and I started to see you a state intern." And as a reminder, a state intern in the state of Nevada, in other states is called an associate or a pre-licensed professional. Basically, I've graduated, I have an interim license, and I'm working under the supervision of a licensed marriage and family therapist. Um, and I remember she was like, "Blanca, that was 4 years ago." Like things cost more now. So just from the beginning, an immediate thing I saw within myself was just I have to make myself affordable for everyone, and I have to make it not a burden on anyone to access therapy with me. And this is what that might look like. So immediately that was where I was at when I started my practice. What about you?
When I started my practice, it was just, I don't even know if desperation was the right word, but certainly I was in a survival state because I both knew that I didn't want to work full time for anybody ever again, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I've said this before. So many mentors were like, you should start your own practice. But nobody ever said, we're going to show you how to do it and how to think about it. And that's why even though in moments of doubt, when I'm sitting with my coaching clients, I'm like, no, no, I know this is exactly what I need to be doing, right? Because nobody tells you how to think about things from A to Z and how to make it sustainable.
Correct.
So I'd say like my first 3 years, I was blundering around when it came to money. And I didn't, I was like, okay, I'm going to accept these two insurances because that's what most people use in the state. I didn't do a whole lot of thinking about reimbursement. Um, yeah, it was just like get clients, make money.
Yes, exactly. Get clients. That's I feel
Yeah.
very similarly about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, the sliding scale was a very early addition because I wanted to do that in a justice informed way. But even then I was in my infancy, so to speak, in terms of how I was thinking about these issues and liberation. Like I didn't know a whole lot about it. Um I learned over time how to talk more about hardship versus sacrifice when talking about the sliding scale with people in a way that honored me as well. I think my lowest rate at first didn't really reflect what I needed in order to make a living and not be in a position of hardship myself. So I adjusted it over time, but definitely I think like my initial money decisions were just survival.
Yeah.
Um, and I used to have this friend in grad school, friend acquaintance, I guess, who would always say to me, "You have to spend money to make money," and I was like, "What does that even mean?" It sounded so ridiculous to me, but I still remember it because there were things that I was spending time doing that were also taking away from my ability to actually be able to serve clients and make money. Um, that I ended up having to pay other people to do, like hiring an accountant who was
Right.
also my CFO. Like, why am I sitting on the floor doing my own accounting for my business just because I can? Doesn't mean I should. So those were a lot of like how I related to money, like in the first few years.
Yeah, I really relate to that. The idea of like survival and just get clients. I think my lowest session fee was $40. I've made allowances for even less if a client is going through a hardship and then, and I know we have an agreement for what the ending that might look like. But I'm curious, what was your lowest at the beginning?
Yeah, I think my lowest at the beginning was 80, which for me, like, it is low. And it was certainly
That is low.
slightly, yeah, it was slightly lower than my lowest network reimbursement. So I was actually getting paid more from insurance at that point for
Oof.
my lowest reimbursement, which for us is technically a 90834, which is 45-minute session. There's one that's lower than that, but typically I'm not doing those sessions. Um, but yeah, that was my lowest. Even my cancellation sort of policy fees didn't reflect something that was sustainable for me either. Again, I was blundering through working in what felt like care in my policies, like, for example, with parents, especially when I was seeing a lot more children. I had every 6 months one free cancellation because kids get sick. And at the time, my practice was in person, and this was before COVID. And I used to say, like, don't bring your kids if they have a fever just because you're worried about the late fee, because if I get sick, then your kid has no therapist. So
Right.
I would have those freebies worked in. So usually somebody late cancel, I'd be like, hey, you have your free cancellation. Do you want to use it or not? And they would choose to use it, and then it resets. I still have that. And of course, I'm chronically ill, so I understand chronic health issues, um, like migraine and things like that. And I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can tell where someone isn't like abusing my flexibility with that. Like, Um, so similarly to you, I've made concessions in different circumstances. Or one of my money related traumas happened with my first therapist because he wouldn't give me just like a temporary low fee agreement while we were working out an insurance issue. Um, and he was like, I'm comfortable with you, like, just having me, like, owing me the money until you're able to pay it. And I was like, well, I'm not comfortable with that
Right.
because basically I'm racking up a debt while I'm waiting to find out if the insurance company is going to grant you a single case agreement. And I'll explain what that is for people who don't understand, to allow you to keep seeing me. So what happened is my job, they changed the insurance that we had, and he was not in network with that new insurance company. And sometimes for continuity of care, the insurance company will allow the therapist to argue for what's called a single case agreement, where they'll reimburse you at a contracted rate so that you can keep seeing the client so that their care isn't interrupted.
Mhm.
And I've done one of these for my own client, and it's actually not that complicated to do.
Oh, good.
And we went through the process, and they denied it. They denied it, um, and I had stopped seeing him because I was like, I just can't afford to do this. And he's like, well, I know you'll pay me back eventually. And I'm like, I don't want to be in that position with you.
Right.
So, and it's in our ethics code that we don't create a debtor creditor relationship with our clients.
Right.
So when I had things like a client losing their job or something like that, like, we would create a temporary agreement, but it had to have an end date, at least, for both of us, right? Like, I can't be resentful about the fact that this is costing me more than I can actually, like, I have to give, but you
Right.
deserve to know that I'll still keep seeing you until a specified period of time. I've also hooked up clients with scholarships for therapy that have allowed me to get paid in those kinds of circumstances. Um, so I veered off a little bit from the what was your lowest? I think that was the initial question
Yeah, it
you
was.
asked
Yeah.
me. But those are other things that I have also done similar to you.
Yeah. And I appreciate that first therapist of yours intentions, but it's not, the context isn't really very well thought out.
No.
Because yeah, it's against your ethics code. And also, what if you just disappeared or really couldn't afford to back pay 10 sessions?
And I
At how
couldn't.
much per session?
Oh gosh. I think it was like maybe 150 or something. I can't
I
remember. But it
Most
was, yeah.
Americans don't have money for $1,000 emergency.
Yeah.
How? What are the chances you could just drop 15? Yeah, I
Yeah.
just 1.5K on something. I couldn't, and at least
Yeah.
not in our youth.
No, I mean, and that was like, I was in a group, at that time I was in a group practice job with like a $34,000, 32,000 salary, right? And I was like, my rent was like 900 for a room that I was subletting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, let alone all of the other expenses. So yeah, I didn't have it. And he was like, well, I think that this is important because, you have some psychological, um I don't remember exactly how he said it, but essentially he was arguing that because I had stuff having to do with money as part of my own psychological whatever, that was why he needed to hold on to me paying the fee as it was. um and I said to him that, like, sometimes a cigar could be something else, but sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And the
Right.
fact of the matter is I maybe there is money stuff for me to process because I've been poor my whole life, right? And I have a lot of money trauma, um, and fears around scarcity that are both real, right now in this moment, but also have been true for me in my life. But it's also true that I just can't pay you.
Right. Right.
right?
This is not of if she wanted to, she would kind of situation. Like, this is not
Right,
trauma holding you back. This is literal dollars in your bank account holding you back.
right, right. And
Yeah.
so like I walked out and it was so hard. Like I felt like I don't know, maybe heartbroken was probably a good way to describe it. Because I had been in therapy with this therapist for like 2 years. But the way he handled the money thing was just awful. And I didn't want to repeat that with people in my business. I knew that as much. And so, does that mean I've had people who have had I have had people who've had to stop services as a result of financial concerns.
Absolutely.
But I really take a lot of care around how we handle that. And I typically try to offer to exhaust my options before we get to that point, like pursuing the single case agreement, for example. I was that all of that paperwork has to be done by me,
Which you don't get paid
but
for.
which you don't get paid for. But anyway,
Mhm.
um, yeah. So that all of those experiences color and shape how I've approached the money issue in my business. So I'm curious about just like we've talked about insurance, but we haven't really talked about the decisions we've made around taking it versus not. Um, and like, where are you at now with respect to that?
I currently take insurance. I only take a couple through my private practice, but I take many of the major ones through an agency I contract with. But I started taking insurance. The reason I started taking insurance is I was working part time still at my office job and part time at my private practice, which was cash pay only, and it was doing well. That it was time to jump ship. But like Casera, I don't have wealthy parents. I don't have a spouse to fall back on. The entirety of my bills are exclusively entirely on me. And so I simply could not take the risk of jumping from a part-time job and a part-time private practice to a full-time private practice and just hoping the clients come in. So I had to make the choice to join an agency and take some insurance and fill my caseload that way. And that is how ultimately I was able to leave my other job and just be a full-time therapist. So really the decision for me was a financial one. I would 100% prefer to see only cash pay, but the population I desire to work with might have enough to cover their copay and cover their insurance premium, but not necessarily enough to cover my cash pay rate weekly. At that time, and I'm certainly not putting myself in any corners or anything like that. I'm open to the journey and what it takes me, but that was what led me to taking insurance. And there's a ton of headaches, a ton of headaches. Um, but I just simply needed to pay my mortgage, and that was the way I could do it.
And
What
have
about you? Oh,
oh how you're thinking about it changed at all since then? Has.
yeah, it has. I mean, the way that I see it now, for me personally, and please no one ever feel like the what works for me has to work for you. For me, at this time and place in my practice and in my life, it feels like a necessary evil. Because there are a lot of people out there simply cannot afford therapy. They simply cannot afford a cash pay rate, but they have their insurances that will pay. But some of the things that insurance companies have put me through, there's one actively trying to remove a client from getting therapy benefits because they believe they're accessing it too much. to the point where they forced a client to participate in a program that she, quote unquote, didn't need to consent to, and forced me to discuss with a case manager at an insurance company how to get her off of therapy. And I can't say more because of confidentiality, but this is, it's just atrocious. It's not okay. To the point where I had to tell this insurance company, like, you are talking about this person and like they're a medical case that you can track, is their cholesterol going up or going down? Like, this is a human being with layers and layers of complex trauma. There's going to be weeks where things are great and boundaries are set, and the person is thriving, and then there's going to be weeks when they're exhausted from all the trauma and everything else going on in their life, where it's harder to set boundaries, where it's harder to maintain progress, blah blah blah. To the point where I'm pretty sure I made the person cry because there was like a little in their voice when I stopped my little monologue. But I find that horrendous. I just atrocious behavior from an insurance company. Ironically, I have the same insurance company through the marketplace, and they have been pushing for an in-home physical exam.
Oh, what the
Swear
hell?
to God, Kasara, they call me every other day. We want to tell you about this great program. We'll come to your house and do a physical exam. And I'm like, no, I have a primary
Ew.
care physician. I am accessing my medical care. You are an insurance company, not a medical provider. You do not get to come in and do a medical assessment on me. This is why I see doctors. You are an
Right.
insurance company. Stay in your lane. And they're like, no, no, no. I'm like, no, you need to be quiet and listen to me. What this is doing is you're trying to get into my home to make decisions about my care to ultimately raise my premiums. You have no business getting this involved in my healthcare other than paying for it, which is what I pay you about. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. But what I'm saying is insurance companies are fucking horrific. And some people need to use your insurance to access care.
Mhm.
And I also just want to really, I've noticed like within the therapy field there's tension. There's people who judge people who don't take insurance, and there's people who judge people who do take insurance. And I really don't think that's fair because there's enough out there for all of us, and we all get to decide what and how, what makes sense to run our practices. For me right now, this makes sense to run my practice. Will that be the case in 2 years or 5 or fuck 6 months? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm willing to like make changes if I need to, but as of right now, like that's where I'm at. Um they are horrendous, and
Yes. Yes.
I
And
got to do
you
what
know
I got to do.
the judgment thing is so interesting to me because it's really not considered like consistent with liberation,
Right.
right? Like if we're really thinking about it, why are you doing that? Right? Like why are you doing that? It almost like feels very similar to me as the like divestment from licensure conversation,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Where there's like a judgment sometimes from the folks who have divested to the people who have not, and vice versa, right? Where they're the people who have not, who are like, well, they're not really, if they're not licensed, then they're not, you know, all of the stuff that I find to just be like, just distracting from our ability to unify around the fights that we actually need to be able to.
Yeah.
So that's just like a parenthetical comment to the judgment piece that I think is important here. Um, but to go back, um, I didn't have any deep thoughts about taking it other than like, these are the ones I know people are going to be looking for me who used to see me at this other practice. Um, I wasn't actively recruiting them. They found me, and I just knew they were going to be using insurance. That
Mhm.
was literally it.
Mhm.
Um, However, the more I dealt with insurance, the more personal my feelings became about it. because I just like, so we get these, so here's the tea, y'all, in case you don't know. We get these reimbursement schedules, these fee schedules that tell us how much the insurance company is going to pay us for different codes, different billing codes of
Mm-hmm.
services. And we are legally required to not disclose what those rates are. So when I have this conversation, I always say, I'm not going to tell you any real numbers, but I am going to give you a very real picture with some fake numbers. So, if hypothetically speaking, my out of pocket rate is $250 an hour, I maybe see $80 of the $250 for the session, my 45-minute session, or maybe $115 for my 60-minute session. Now, if these numbers approximate real reimbursement rates, that's totally unintentional because I'm just picking arbitrary numbers. FYI, insurance companies, if you're listening in. But that's a pretty good estimate of a gap that we would see for our
Right.
services.
Right.
And we've talked about this before. We understand that these numbers that we're working with are still much higher than most minimum wage, right? And we already feel that minimum wage is criminal as a system. Okay. So I just want to put that there as we
Right.
have this conversation because we've acknowledged that in another episode as well. But we have so many other expenses to take into account on the money that we make. We have taxes that we
Mm.
have to pay, 30%, okay, on the money that we make. We have the overhead for our businesses, which is less if you don't have an office, but you still have to pay. If you're doing an electronic medical record of some kind, you're usually paying for
Which
that
are
software.
required by most ethics boards now. I do believe
Yes.
most ethics boards are moving to you have to have electronic medical records, and that's not a PDF on your computer. That is an
Mm-hmm.
electronic health record system like Simple Practice, Therapy Notes, etc. That can
Yep.
cost upwards of $100 a month
Mm-hmm.
for one that you
Mm-hmm.
need that has everything you need.
Yes. And many of those platforms are innovating. They're continuing to add more features as therapists request them and ask for them. Obviously, those things cost money. The people who are running those businesses have to get paid as well. And so we've seen how much our software is costing us go up as well. In
And can
addition
I
to
add
that,
on
you, mm-hmm,
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
software for accounting services,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
QuickBooks, etc.
QuickBooks, yep, or what you pay your accountant in my case.
Yep.
Who's also my CFO. We also have our um, CEUs, so continuing education that we have to maintain for our licensure. Those cost money, or any conferences that we attend may cost money, or travel to conferences that we attend to just
Which is
continue to get more
thousands,
education.
yeah, which can be thousands of dollars a year, even if you're not traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Even if
Mm-hmm.
you're not traveling, even if you're doing a training that's fully online, it's still upwards of $15 to $2,000 for only a fraction of the community or the continuing education hours you need.
Exactly. And it may not even cover all the topics that you need because we have certain areas that we have to get credits for. And I forgot somewhere in there because I had a list in my mind of the different expenses, but you can sort of get a picture now of what actually happens with that money. And we still have to pay ourselves so that we can also pay our bills and put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And um, unlike Blanca, um, I'm currently in a partnered situation where I am receiving some support from my partner. However, I always operate after some relationship trauma. You'll get a little bit of personal information about me of a long-term relationship where I was in, where I was taking care of all of the finances. That really left me in like just financial shambles, because I was the primary breadwinner, and so I always operate as if I have to 100% be able to take care of myself. I don't care if I'm with anybody else or not. I need to know that the money that I'm bringing in can take care of me without another person, especially because I have health issues and all of these other things. So um, I operate my business as if I am single. That is the way I operate my business. And I think it's just really important to consider also like the different places where we are as well. Obviously, there's different financial considerations, but where I am, Boston is really freaking expensive. Um, like the possibility of owning a home is just like non-existent. Um, so I just want you to think about the listener. If you're not a therapist, like I'm really painting this picture for those of you who don't understand sort of the economic realities of like what actually goes into a therapist considering how they price their services. Because this
Right.
just isn't about wanting to be balling out of control. Right? It's so many things. And to some degree, insurance can be a necessary evil. But I also think, like, again, if we can be in community about different ways that we're thinking about these systems, it doesn't have to be necessarily. And I say that because, like, there's so many other places where, again, they've put in these scholarships in place. Some folks use a Robin Hood model, as we sort of call it, which I do as well. Um, Higher cost services supplement lower cost services, or allow me to offer pro bono spots, which I have done. I have offered like a pro bono spot for a client before. I've offered lower than my lowest fee spots for folks, and that's supplemented by other aspects of my business that are not bound to insurance. So I think that's a way that I try to counter that. And um, but I also do think that it's important that we don't get into the trap of people feeling like they're just being greedy if
Right.
they're not doing those things, right? Because everybody deserves to decide what they need, and what
And
that looks like.
what their business model looks like.
Hmm.
Right? I've tried doing assessments. I did it for a while. It was nice. I found them to be almost more traumatic. The type of evaluations I was doing immigration evaluations. And if I got one now, I would consider doing it. But they were so deeply traumatic,
Hmm.
that ended up being harder for me. So for me, what works right now is seeing clients. That's what works right now. And as I'm not interested in shaking it up, um, simply because of the context of our times. Like I'm trying to figure out a way to survive autocracy. So it's not the time to be like, let me try this with my business today. For me personally, I also want to add a little more context to what Sarah was talking about earlier with why things cost the way they cost. Like $80 sounds like a lot of money per hour. Yeah, it sounds like a ton of money per hour. But most therapists aren't working 35, 40 hours a week. Excuse me. They're not seeing clients 30 to 40 hours a
Right.
week, right? We might be working that many hours because we're doing notes, we're doing assessments, we're following up with insurance, but the actual money per hour that we make, we only see it when we're actively seeing those clients. And
Right.
so, as much as it sounds like a ton of money, it's really not. It's really not. And it also doesn't account for licensing fees. My license is up for renewal at the end of this year. It's $450. And that's on top of the 40 hours of continuing education credits that I had to get over the last 2 years. It doesn't account for student loans that we
Oh,
have to
yeah.
be paying back, right? There's, if up into before your license, there's supervision costs. I was spending almost $600 a month on supervision costs before I was taking insurance. So when I was seeing clients at $40 an hour, 60, 80, right? Out of that, I had to somehow get almost, not quite, almost $600 a month to pay for supervision. Then, if you are taking insurance independently to get on insurance panels, that's over $1,000, depending on how many panels you want to be on, right? Then, unless you're doing the billing yourself, which is an entire specialty that you can and should get trained on if you're going to be a biller, if you're hiring a biller, that's an added cost. So either you're teaching yourself billing and you're spending countless amount of time submitting claims, following up on claims, fighting about claims. If you're not doing that, you're paying someone to do that for you, right? And then there's the things Cassara and I don't have to worry about right now, like rent. The last place I rented was percentage based. The more money I made, the more money she made, right? So it's not like I was seeing all these clients and making all this money. Nope, it just my rent cost increased. It also
Felt
doesn't
so
account.
illegal.
I know. I know. But it's so common. It was such a cute office too. I miss it. Then there's like other things that you don't think about, like internet. We have to have solid internet. I cannot risk my internet going in and out. I cannot risk my internet getting bogged down if my roommate is playing a video game or if someone else in my household is watching Netflix, right? Then there's health insurance costs. My own health insurance premium is $550 a month. No employer pays that for me. I pay that for me. So just a little bit of added context. I hope we're not freaking out anyone who wants to do a private practice. These are the realities of running your own business. It's the cost of admission of running your own business. I'm sure I could get a job working full time for a salary somewhere where I couldn't choose my clients, I couldn't choose my hours, but hey, maybe some of this other stuff would be taken care of, and maybe that's worth it. I don't know. Not where I'm at right now, but
I'm glad you mentioned the supervision thing because that's, oh man, they like, so again, after we graduate, again, for those of you who are not familiar with the context or are learning about, you're here because you want to learn, um, we have to be supervised for a certain amount of hours in order to get our licensure. And so it's very common for people to join group practices as a way of doing that because supervision is kind of offered as a perk, so to speak, as in sort of a trade for you accepting a lower salary. And also, your reimbursements are lower as an unlicensed provider who has to be supervised. All your notes have to be signed off on by your supervisor. Um, and it's not an unusual place for practices to trap new clinicians, and I use trap intentionally because a lot of people don't want to negotiate all of the things that we're talking about. And so, therefore, it's much easier to just stay with a group practice that is actively exploiting you. You may not be aware of it, but most of them are. Um, I mentioned this on a previous episode, a clinician who I think I will take credit for pushing her to reconsider this job. She was making $50 an hour. And I was just like, what in the world? And, she's working until like 10 o'clock at night, seeing folks after working like a full time job all day. Right. And like a lot of these practices are just like, okay, you don't want to deal with it? We will, but don't worry about it. And you don't know what goes on in the background, like the fact that they might be able to renegotiate their rates because groups can get renegotiate higher reimbursements than individuals can. Some
mhm.
insurance companies put a cap on that. So they'll say you have to have at least 5 clinicians to be considered for a group reimbursement renegotiation. So there are all these constrictions and stipulations, and practices are just poised to be like, oh, you just got out of school, we're going to take you and we're going to hope that you never leave. But then people really burn out in those kinds of settings. And two of my coaching clients are exactly in that position. They are wanting out of their agencies because they're burnt out and totally exploited. Um, and they're barely making ends meet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you had to ask us, maybe later, we'll hold this question for later, like, so why do we do it? Sure, we both have answers to that question. Um, but I wanted to talk, Blanca, a little bit about, you kind of touched on this, like the tension between the need to make a living and what feels accessible and sustainable, um, not just for your clients, but for you. Like, how do you negotiate that dilemma in your mind?
Oh, you couldn't have gone with something easier. How do
Never.
I negotiate that dilemma? I mean, I think, well, one, I think it just takes time. I didn't get into this line of work to be a millionaire. I also didn't get into this line of work to starve or not have what I need. There's also a reality that in order to do this job well, I have to take care of myself. And that looks like not working 40 hours a week. I mean, client hours, right? Like that. Oh my God. Um, I think where I've landed is that, oh God, I don't know. It's so nuanced. So please, please, please forgive me for whatever nuance might be missing from what I'm about to say. We're all existing under capitalism, and we all have to negotiate what we want versus what we need and what we want to prioritize, right? And folks who maybe want to see me, who don't have insurance, who pay my cash pay rate, they have, this is a necessity for them, and they work it into their budget. They just do, you know? And whether that's a $10 copay or $120 cash rate or more or whatever, people figure it out, right? Like my own therapist is cash pay only. Her fee is up there, 150. Yeah, but I've negotiated away in my budget to pay it, and she deserves it, right? She's earned that money. Um so I guess imperfectly that's how I've negotiated it, is that if people have the ability to prioritize it, they will. And if they can't, well, that's why I take Medicaid. And that's why I take the plans that are most commonly taken in where I live by working class people, you know? So does that answer your question?
I mean, it's your answer. It's your answer. I think for me, this has looked like a lot of different things over the years. Um, because sustainable negotiation also means what I can physically do. Um, if I'm sitting there with you feeling like, oh my God, I don't want to be here right now because I feel like I'm worried about making ends meet, that's not good for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to feel good. I have to feel good. So this has become kind of an open dialogue conversation with clients when money issues come up. It's also a background conversation that I'm constantly having with myself. And I also talk with clinicians about being mindful of their spots and how they fill them. Because
Mhm.
that might mean, like, for example, maybe you can offer one pro bono spot and that's all you can offer, and that's okay.
Which I
Maybe
do, for the record.
yeah. Maybe you can offer one low fee spot that's lower than your typical rate when somebody's in an emerging situation,
Mhm.
right? Maybe you can offer two. This just all depends. You do have to know what's going on with your money, though, in order to be able to make these decisions. And so, financial literacy and increasing your financial literacy is really important if
Mhm.
you're going to do this. And I say that because, yeah, I hired an accountant, but my accountant also had made, and they're not my accountant anymore, a huge mistake with my taxes, that I didn't catch. And it cost me a lot of money. And then I was watching all my paperwork like a hawk after that. And I did catch errors the following year. Um, but like, you can't not watch your money. You just can't. So you may hand it over to somebody to handle like like filling out the paperwork and all of that, but you better know what you're looking at and ask as many questions as you need to ask and know why numbers are where they are, right? Like, and then all your W-2s and all of these different forms, the 1095, so and all of those things are accounted for, right? But I say that because, like, in order to make some of these decisions, you have to know what you're actually making, what you're paying for your taxes, all of these different things, because that does allow me to negotiate what I can offer that is still within reach for the people that I want to serve, but doesn't mean that I completely have to sacrifice everything in the process,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, um, just thinking of like another example, you know, psychological assessment, which is something that I offer, is actually reimbursed at a significantly lower rate than psychotherapy.
Mhm. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, those of you who need assessments and are wondering why these wait lists are so damn long, right? It's because more and more people are dropping out of offering assessments because they just, like, the amount of labor is not commensurate with the reimbursement.
Right. I'm guessing they pay you for the hours you see the client, not the 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 page reports you're writing.
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, if your reports are that long. I say that because, like, learning about therapeutic assessment has helped me reimagine my reports so that they are also more sustainable for my
Oh,
business.
good.
That's a whole different conversation and topic. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're not guaranteed that they're going to reimburse you for all the time you spent in face to face testing. And they have certain numbers where it's like, if it exceeds this amount of time, they're not likely to pay. Or if they do pay you, you run a higher risk of being audited later on and owing them money if they think that maybe there was an error on your end as a provider. So, like, um, sometimes I'm making decisions in my business that, well, no, I can't offer the service at this time with it using insurance because it's just not financially sustainable for me, right? But that's why I'm also teaching people, like, about renegotiating their rates and how to do that and what it looks like in that process, because we shouldn't have to make those decisions. We really shouldn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
It should be sustainable in the first place, but a lot of clinicians don't know how to renegotiate their rates. They don't know that they can. They
Mhm.
don't know how to go about putting the letter to ask for it. They don't know how to go about putting together countering objections, or that they can even counter objections. There's
Right.
so many of these things that go into the business part that, um, for me, is worth putting in the effort to make sure that I'm offering a service that is sustainable financially for me, but also still remains accessible to the people that I work with. But it also has meant cutting down on my therapy offerings um,
Mm.
significantly, um, because I'm like, I'm not going to continue getting underpaid while I need to be able to pay my medical bills and all of these different things. And so, um,
Mhm.
but those decisions can feel really hard and very painful to do because it does mean that you're maybe ending relationships with folks as a result. So I think going back to your point of nuance, it's not just nuance, it's dynamic,
Yeah.
um, and constantly changing as a result of our own sort of personal circumstances.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if I've learned one thing in my journey to today is just to be open to things about my business changing.
yes.
And and right now it's working really well what I'm doing, or at least well enough. I'm making a big life change soon, depending on how that goes. Maybe so will my business plan, right? And then that'll change and then so will my business plan again.
Mhm.
So, I think it's just about I think being open and being dynamic,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said, being
And
dynamic
open
about it.
communication because we're not taught how to talk about the money aspect of our business with our clients. Um, and it's possible to do that in a way that is caring and intentional and isn't making the client responsible for the decisions that you have to make, right? But
Yeah.
that you know that the decisions you make impact them and how,
Yeah.
and that they impact you as well, right? I just had a money conversation with a client where I'm like, I'm okay with this arrangement, but I still need to get paid before I'm able to offer more services because I'm not going to have you rack up a debt with me, right?
Right.
And I'm also not going to feel good doing my work if I'm worried that I'm not going to get paid. Like, and just being honest about that, right? And not in a punitive way, right? But a caring way, with attention to how capitalism is playing a role in our relationships in ways that I ultimately wish it didn't have to,
Yeah.
right? But yeah,
Yeah.
so uh there's so much in this topic. Was there anything
So
else on your
much.
mind, Blanca?
Uh I mean, I think I just want to normalize that money conversations are really hard. And like you
Yeah.
said, we're not taught it. We're not taught it in school. You may or may not pick it up in supervision. I think I did a little bit, you know. But at the end of the day, no matter what we talk about, what topic we talk about, like how or when or talking to clients about this or that, I just always come back to the reality that at the end of the day, yes, it's a therapeutic relationship and there's boundaries, but it's a relationship nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
It's still two human beings sitting together. And so sometimes it's you just have to just come back to that and say, "Hey, listen, I want to support you. I want to be here for you. I also need to be paid. So what can we do? How can we figure this out together?" I don't know. I'm not saying say those words. I'm just highlighting that at the end of the day, it's still two humans working together. And as scary as that is, for me, it also it makes it less scary. Like for you, it might make it scarier. For me, it makes it less scary because I know there's a human being in front of me who understands the realities of capitalism, at least the clients I've had, and understand that regardless of how much I love this, I need to pay rent. I need to buy food. I need to pay for my licensing fees and all these other things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what I appreciate you about you naming the human part of this is that, like, we've mentioned this in another episode, but like the human gets trained out of us in the
Right.
way we're trained. And
Right.
so when you think about it, these conversations actually feel hard. I don't want to say for no good reason, right? Because we are also bringing money trauma to the table that make these conversations harder, I think, some of us anyway. But I do think that there's an aspect to which, because that goes unaddressed in our training, we're not adequately prepared to have these conversations in a liberatory way
Mm,
that balances the awareness that like we can't escape the influence of capitalism on our businesses, but we could try to be as anti-capitalist as we could possibly be.
right.
And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And I think, we've talked about some of the models and the ways that we approach this, and it is not perfect, right? Like perhaps we could achieve more perfection if we were totally divested from insurance and all of this, but like at the end of the day we're still collecting money for a service that is influenced by all of these external capitalistic factors that we just can't control, that these
Yeah.
things are present.
Yeah.
So
In a
yeah.
perfect world, in the world I want, I'd be smoking a joint on the beach, eating a mango, and you'd come to me and talk to me because you have a problem. And then you might hand me another joint or another mango, and then we'd go about our days. But that's not the world we
Yes.
live in because we decided to invent capitalism.
In my perfect world, Blanca, and some people are doing this, which I love, and maybe I'll get there. I would play video games with my clients,
Oh, you
and
can absolutely. I think you should look into
yeah.
how to do that.
I know people are doing it. I know there are like game therapy groups and things like that, but yeah, I'm getting there. If y'all want to see that, let me know.
We want to
Maybe
see
not as
that.
my client, because like that would be too many people to manage. But we'll get there.
Called to gaming.
Call to gaming, yes.
Mhm.
So we want to kind of we'll transition to being called to our bodies, but I want you to think as we kind of close this conversation. If you're a provider who's been listening to this, we want you to think about what's a money story that you carry into your healing work, and in what ways that money story may be rooted in capitalism or not particularly liberation focused, and how you can change that money story, both so that it benefits you and your client as well. So, with that said, let's call ourselves to our bodies. Whatever you're feeling right now, relaxed, inspired, tense, grieving, invigorated, it is all okay. You don't need to act on any of these things. Just pause. Now bring your focus to one small point inside you, your heartbeat. You don't have to feel it right away. Just notice somewhere deep inside your heart is still beating, steady, quiet, working for you. If you feel restlessness or tension, just let it be. Let your heartbeat become your anchor, a quiet rhythm beneath the noise. You are safe to pause. You are allowed to feel what you feel. And underneath it all, your heart keeps going, strong and steady. Stay with that rhythm for just a moment longer. And when you're ready, gently come back to us for a moment of joy and thriving this week. Blanca, what's your moment
Woof.
of joy and thriving?
I don't remember if I talked about this the last time we recorded. So if it's a repeat, please forgive me. But also, yay. I learned to cross stitch when I was a teen. Yeah, I did talk about it last time.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay. You can talk about it again.
Well, I've held on to it. I'm still doing it. I've been cross stitching and listening to audiobooks, which has brought me a lot of joy. And in fact, I actually haven't done it in a week. And I feel very differently this week. And part of me wonders if it's because I haven't had those moments to kind of just like slow
Mm.
down. And granny hobbies are just highly recommended. So I think, I guess a little human moment. I told Sarah I feel like I'm in the waiting room for grief. There's some elderly folks in my family that aren't doing well, and so it's been I'm not feeling myself. I'm not feeling great, and that's just my joy right now. My joy in thriving is just like connecting with my loved ones and then
Mm.
cross stitching. Right now, I'm working on a project that says Nap Club, new members welcome, with some super cute little napping animals for one of my best friends. Um, and yeah, that's my joy in thriving right now. What about you, Sarah?
Mine is that I've been finishing more games lately, which has been really nice. Games has been was another thing that took like a hit from COVID for me, gaming and reading. Um, so finding space for that is really important. And I was trying to figure out yesterday, literally, which new RPG I wanted to play.
Hmm.
Because the Final Fantasy franchise has been disappointing me for the last couple of years. And so I started this game, Metaphor Re Fantasio. I'll put it in
Whoa,
the show notes.
fancy. Well, that sounds
But
very fancy.
it's got a lot of socio-political themes and questioning of the world and going into places where a lot of games maybe don't go. And it's interesting that I've chosen this,
Oh,
but like the music, like the battle music is also really fire. So
I love
I was
that.
dancing around in my kitchen to that last night. And I'm looking forward to going and playing a little bit before I have some more work to do this evening. So,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah,
I love
that's
that. I
my
think that's great.
well, we are approaching the end of the season.
Yeah, we are.
So I think our next episode might be our last for the season, if I remember correctly, maybe. Or second to last. Y'all will know when it comes out. But thank you for sticking with us on this journey. If you haven't, please leave a review and subscribe. If you're listening to this episode, we have divested from the Spotify machine at this
Yes.
point. And so we apologize to our Android users, but our Zencaster direct link is in our link in bio on our Instagram. And we are also on YouTube. YouTube has its own questionable blah, blah, blah. But, we've got to keep ourselves in some places.
Right.
So the least bad ones are where we are right now.
Right.
Whatever that means. So your reviews help. If you think it's 5 stars, then please give it 5 stars and don't just think about it. And we'll see you next time. All right.
Yeah. See you next
Okay.
time.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on our journey. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Please leave us a review and subscribe. You can email us at calltohealingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram at Call to Healing. Sign up for our mailing list, book us for speaking engagements and consulting, or donate to support this endeavor at our one-time donation link in the show notes. You can find even more goodness from us on Patreon at patreon.com/calltohealing. Keep in mind our views are our own and do not represent any organization we may be a part of. Even though we're both clinicians, listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship or clinical contract. If you hear anything that resonates with you in crisis, please seek the help of a trusted provider or the resources provided on our social media page. And remember, you're made for more than just healing. You're made to thrive. Until next time, rest easy.